Good morning. Welcome to the Friday, October 1st, 2010 edition of Inquisition Update. My name is Tom Friess, your host. I'll be with you for the next hour. You're listening to LibertyRadioLive.com. Liberty Radio Live. Thank God for LibertyRadioLive.com. Now we're going to continue in the book Codeword Barbelon, 666 Danger in the Vatican, the Sons of Loyola and Their Plans for World Domination, by P.D. Stewart, book one of a two-book series. Most highly recommended that you get these books, and you can get them at www.luxverbi.org. That's luxverbi.org. Now, we're going to begin discussion, chapter 33 of the book, Does It Still Exist? Skeletons from 1776. We're backing up a few paragraphs for continuity. We try to regather our thoughts after our interview with Bill Hughes yesterday. We're talking specifically about the Illuminati and Skull and Bones and other secret societies that serve the Vatican. Now, it begins with a quote by Robert Spencer in his The Cult of the All-Seeing Eye, published 1964, page 48. Quote, "What is one to do when in order to rule men it is necessary to deceive them?" Unquote. The author begins the chapter by saying, there are men who, as investigation will show, are members of the Catholic or universal Illuminati, though they will never declare themselves to belong to it. Now, have you ever in your life, at least not until listening to LibertyRadioLive.com, have you ever heard of the Illuminati being linked to Catholicism? That's what this chapter is about. This is what no one else will tell you about the Illuminati. It serves the papacy. Again, it says, there are men who, as investigation will show, are members of the Catholic or universal Illuminati, though they will never declare themselves to belong to it. On the other hand, there are those who confidently declare that the Illuminati no longer exist, even though they admit to knowing very little about it. The latter group show themselves to be unwise, for if they know little about the history or workings of the Illuminati, how can they pretend to know that it no longer exists? How could they speak so confidently of a secret society which, on its own admission, has adopted different fronts? These questions render their own answers. There are yet others who say that it is highly unlikely that the 18th century Bavarian Illuminati still exists in any tangible form. They, however, forget that the Illuminati's express strategy was always to morph and coalesce within the more traditional Freemasonry. Said Adam Weishaupt, quote, "Our secret association works in a way that nothing can withstand," unquote. And in March of 1778, Adam Weishaupt wrote to Cato, quote, "By this plan we shall direct all mankind. I've considered everything, and so prepared it, that if the order should this day go to ruin, I shall in 1 year reestablish it more brilliant than ever, though all should be betrayed and printed." So Adam Weishaupt knew how to construct this order and to reconstruct it at any time, if necessary, so that it could continue its diabolical work in the world for the papacy. And it says, on September 25th, 2002, before he was forced to admit to being a member of Skull and Bones, President George W. Bush was asked about his involvement with that secret order. Feigning ignorance, Bush replied, "Does it still exist? The thing is so secret that I'm not even sure that it still exists," unquote. Bush was later forced to give an admission, a one-line sentence in his autobiography. Quote, In my senior year at Yale, I joined Skull and Bones, a secret society so secret I can't say anything more, unquote. This forced admission after his initial denial speaks volumes as to his integrity. We shall return to this in the next chapter. As Bush initially denied whether the Order of Skull and Bones, quote-unquote, still exists, so too the question for us today is, does the Illuminati still exist? The Illuminati has had a very complicated and secretive history. In the London Monthly Magazine of January 1798, there appeared a letter from one Bottiger, provost of the College of Weimar in Germany, in reply to the book by Professor John T. Robeson, charged that writer with making false statements about the Illuminati and declared that since 1790, quote, every concern of Illuminati has ceased, unquote. And an article was posted in 2006 on a Canadian website stating that the Bavarian Illuminati was, quote, nothing more than a curious historical footnote, unquote, and that, quote, there's no evidence that any Illuminati survived its founders, unquote. However, historians Herzog and Schaff say that, quote, by identifying itself with Freemasonry, the order was largely increased, freed from financial difficulties, and protected from persecution, unquote. John Adams, the second President of the United States of America, wrote letters to Colonel William L. Stone, a top Freemason, in which he exposed how Thomas Jefferson, the third President of the United States, was using Masonic lodges for subversive, illuministic purposes. In his letters, we find very important information on the plans of the Illuminati for America, plans now in full operation in the said United States. Even as late as 1953, the California State Senate Committee was of the view that the Illuminati was still alive and well. Quote, modern communism is apparently the same hypocritical and deadly world conspiracy that was founded by the secret order of the Illuminati in Bavaria on May 1, 1776. George Washington believed that the then center of this secret conspiracy, so far as this country was concerned, was to be located in the city of New York, unquote. As such, the dispute is not whether the Illuminati still exists, but rather in what form and from what place does this secret society operate today? Is it from the old world of Rome or the new world of America? And I'll give you my opinion, it's both. Its operatives are all over the world, but its highest concentrations are right here in Protestant USA, and they take their orders from Rome, from the Jesuit general. Now, under the subtitle Illuminism, Introduction and Progress in America, the author writes, let us hear what Professor Robeson says about the continuity of the Illuminati. Quote, the association of which I have been speaking is the Order of Illuminati, founded in 1776 by Adam Weishaupt, professor of canon law, that is, Roman Catholic canon law, at the University of Ingolstadt, abolished in 1786 by the Elector of Bavaria, but revived immediately after under another name and in a different form all over Germany. It was again detected and seemingly broke up, but it had by this time taken so deep root that it still subsists without being detected and has spread into all countries of Europe. I am withheld by discretion from putting the public in possession of all their mysteries, unquote. The Order of the Illuminati was able to secretly establish several lodges in America. In 1785, for example, the Columbian Lodge of the Order of the Illuminati was established in New York City and had many high-ranking patrons. Among its members were the likes of Governor DeWitt Clinton, Horace Greeley, who was a politician and the editor of the New York Daily Tribune, Charles Dana, and Clinton Roosevelt, the ancestor of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, to name just a few. Roosevelt wrote a book called Science of Government, founded on natural law, in which he referred to himself and other members as the enlightened ones, and said that the United States Constitution was a quote-unquote leaky vessel. A leaky vessel. The Constitution of the United States is a leaky vessel. Why would they know unless they intended to modify that Constitution? That's what's happening today. I continue with a quote. It says, he said that the United States Constitution was a quote-unquote leaky vessel, which was, quote, hastily put together when we left the British flag, unquote, and therefore needed revision. They have to revise the Constitution. That's what they did with the Patriot Act, which was produced by Viet Dinh, a Vietnamese Roman Catholic refugee to this country, given a Jesuit education and hustled into the Assistant Attorney General's office under John Ashcroft. He was the one, Viet Dinh, Jesuit-trained Viet Dinh, adjunct professor at Jesuit Georgetown University. He's the one who produced the Patriot Act. Okay? This was a Catholic who did this, and it's the Illuminati, or the Universal Catholic Illuminati, that wants to change this Constitution. And remember, as we learned in the book, The Ark and the Dove by J. Moss Ives, it was Catholicism through the Carroll family and through the Freemasons in the founding years of our Constitution that claim credit for our Constitution. Now, if they claim credit for establishing this Constitution, then naturally you would expect that if it ever needs modification, it would be up to them to do it, right? This is consistent with everything we're reading right here. And that's what they're doing. They're modifying the Constitution. Actually, they're just destroying it, purposely destroying it. It has served its purpose. It has harnessed the power of Protestantism to do Roman Catholic bidding in the world. We've served as a loyal papal proxy warrior for the papacy for as long as we've existed, and now they're ready to put into full operation this new world order under the papacy. They're tearing down our Constitution, and like they've always done throughout history, they're going to extirpate God's people. God's deceived people who have been enslaved by the papacy without their knowledge nearly since the founding of this country. And this is a reality that is difficult to sink in unless one reads and studies books like Codeword Barbelon and Eric John Phelps' magnificent work, Vatican Assassins, and other researchers. Now he continues, why did Roosevelt want a government built on natural law? Reader, natural law is the foundation and pillar of Roman Catholic canon law. See where we're headed? Now, on July 19, 1789, David Papin, president of Harvard University, a Catholic university, issued a warning to the graduating class concerning the Illuminati's influence on American politics and religion. Now, if it is indeed a Roman, if Illuminism is indeed serving the papacy, naturally, it would be involved in American politics and religion. Remember, the Roman Catholic Church is a union of church and state, and their model of government throughout history has always been a union of church and state in every country that served the papacy. The papacy made the laws, and the secular power of the king enforced Roman Catholic canon law, and that normally resulted in the extirpation of Bible-believing, God-fearing people. It's called the Inquisition. All right, almost 10 years later, during the summer of 1798, Reverend G.W. Snyder, a Lutheran minister, I'll say a Lutheran Catholic minister because of our ecumenical movement here in this country. It's hardly necessary to call them Lutheran anymore. They're Catholic. Okay. G.W. Snyder in 1798, and of course this was before the ecumenical movement was uncovered, but Reverend G.W. Snyder, a Lutheran minister, wrote a letter to President George Washington and included a copy of Professor Robeson's book, Proofs of a Conspiracy. Now, that book's still available, and I recommend that you get it and read it. He included a copy of Professor Robeson's book, Proofs of a Conspiracy, expressing his concern about the Illuminati infiltrating the American Masonic lodges. Were you ever told this in your history books? No. And it says, in former President Washington's response, dated September 25, 1798, he wrote, quote, I have heard much about the nefarious and dangerous plan and doctrines of the Illuminati, unquote, but added that he didn't believe that they had taken over any of the Masonic lodges. Not satisfied with President Washington's response, Snyder wrote a second letter requesting a more reassuring answer from the president. President Washington's reply was, quote, it was not my intention to doubt that the doctrines of the Illuminati and the principles of Jacobinism have not spread into the United States. On the contrary, no one is more satisfied of this fact than I am. The idea I meant to convey was that I did not believe that the lodges of Freemasons in this country had, as societies, endeavored to propagate the diabolical tenets of the first or the pernicious principles of the latter. That individuals of them may have done it, or that the founder or instruments employed to have found the democratic societies in the United States may have had this object, and actually had a separation of the people from their government in view, is too evident to be questioned. So Washington knows about Illuminati influence in the country. Illuminati and Jacobinism. Jacobinism is an ultramontane sect for the papacy. And it says, this is an incredible statement. Washington admitted, quote, that individuals, unquote, of the Illuminati or their quote-unquote instruments may have been employed to found the democratic societies in the United States. The Illuminati or their instruments founded the democratic societies in the United States. That means the Jesuits founded the democratic societies in the United States. That's the only conclusion you can get to. And I'm reminded as I read this of what was said in the book by J. Moss Ives, The Ark and the Dove, that Bellarmine was the third. I think the first was Thomas Aquinas, and then another Jesuit priest by the name of Suarez, and then finally Bellarmine perfected the form of government we know today as democracy. Now, I don't hear researchers talk about this much. I hear plenty of talk about the Jesuits creating the form of government known as communism in the Paraguayan reductions, and I've heard of fascism being a creation of the Jesuits, but I've never heard much talk at all about democracy being a form of government created by the Jesuit order. But that's what the clear insinuation is here. And Washington knew about it. And it says on July 4th, 1812, the president of Roman Catholic Harvard University, Joseph Willard, gave a speech in Lancaster, New Hampshire. Quote, there is sufficient evidence that a number of societies of the Illuminati have been established in this land of gospel light and civil liberty, which were first organized from the Grand Society in France. He's talking about Freemasonry in France. They are doubtless secretly striving to undermine all of our ancient institutions, civil and sacred. These societies are closely leagued with those of the same order, that's Freemasonry, in Europe. They have all the same object in view. The enemies of all order are seeking our ruin. Should infidelity generally prevail, our independence would fall, of course. Our republican government would be annihilated, to be replaced by a benevolent fascism. So here we have these societies known as Freemasonry, both in France and in Europe, that would be seeking the ruin of our republican form of government, and that if they should prevail, our independence would fall as a result. And may I just suggest to you that in addition to the Patriot Act and all the other presidential orders, executive orders that have come down that are directly contrary to our Constitution, this idea of the North American Union, the redrawing of the boundaries of this hemisphere, clearly destroy the independence of this country by lumping them in with French Roman Catholic Canada and Spanish Roman Catholic Mexico. Look, you don't just arbitrarily redraw the borders of a nation without there being a new government to govern that new nation. And you don't simply impose your Constitution and Bill of Rights on Canada and Mexico without their consent. So simply by redrawing the boundaries of the North American Union and dissolving the boundaries between Canada and Mexico, they've simply created a new country. So what does that do to our independence? Completely destroys it. What does it do to our form of government? The same thing. And all of it was done without the consent or even knowledge of the American people. They've simply taken over the country without our consent. The Illuminati. Now, they're not nameless and faceless anymore. We know who they are. They're oath-spitting warriors of the Pope. They go by the name of Freemason. They go by the name of Illuminati. They go by the name of Phi Beta Kappa. They go by the name of Knights of Columbus, Opus Dei, and every other secret society in this country. They all work for the papacy. And when you begin to comprehend this, you have to begin to ask yourself, if they're really so powerful and so widespread, why haven't they just declared the Pope the king of the world by now? Because that's what they're all about. Well, they have to be able to control the people, and they have to boil the toad slowly or he'll jump out of the water. That's why. A year later, after the president of Harvard, Joseph Willard, gave his speech at Lancaster, New Hampshire, implying Illuminism and Freemasonry and the reduction or annihilation of our country and replacement by some benevolent fascism. A year later, in a letter from Adams to former President Thomas Jefferson, dated June 30th, 1813, he wrote, quote, "You certainly never felt the terrorism excited by Gennett in 1793, when 10,000 people in the streets of Philadelphia day after day threatened to drag Washington out of his house and effect a revolution. Nothing but a miracle could have saved the United States from a fatal revolution of government, unquote. Yet, according to Bottinger, since 1790, quote, every concern of the Illuminati had ceased, unquote. How strange. Evidence of the continuation of this secret power's work can today be found in the inscription on the back of the United States dollar bill. The current design of the Great Seal was approved by Congress on the 20th of June, 1782, and was only introduced to the dollar bill in 1935. 1935. They've known about their plan all along. And it says on the reverse side of the dollar bill, you'll find the Latin words Novus Ordo Seclorum. It literally translates New Secular Order or New World Order. You know, you have a secular or ecclesiastical. Ecclesiastical would be heavenly. Secular would be worldly, right? So it literally translates New World Order. Most interestingly is the date in Roman numerals on the back of the dollar bill at the foot of the Masonic pyramid. The letters MDCCLXXVI, which adds to 1776, not the year of the founding of this country, no, it's the very year the Illuminati was founded by Adam Weishaupt. 1776. Remember, these are Freemasonic symbols, and they commemorate a Freemasonic endeavor, the New World Order. And remembering that the Illuminati was an underground for the Jesuit order, which was suppressed by Pope Clement XIV in 1773. And as necessity would have it, a Jesuit priest, Adam Weishaupt, created the Illuminati as an underground so that the Jesuits could continue their nefarious global aims. And rather than operating under the name Jesuit or Illuminati, they changed hats again and infiltrated Freemasonry. And Freemasonry has been a secret society of the Jesuits, and that's how they've continued their global aims. That's the instrument through which they've cloaked their Jesuit activities. But the cat's out of the bag when you understand the Freemasonic or Illuminati, or more correctly, Jesuit symbolism on the dollar bill. And it commemorates a new world order, and it commemorates the year of the founding of the Illuminati. And all of this, the aim of all of this is to create a one-world government with the Pope at its head. All right. Des Griffin proffers this explanation, quote, this insignia, Novus Ordo Seclorum, was adopted by Adam Weishaupt at the time he founded the Order of the Illuminati, May 1st, 1776. It is that event that is event that is memorialized by the MDCCLXXVI at the base of the pyramid, and not the date of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, as the uninformed, the Goya, the sheeple, God's people in this country have supposed. This insignia acquired Masonic significance after the merger of the order with the Order of the Illuminati. That is, the merger of the Jesuit order with the Order of the Illuminati. What we're talking about is Freemasonry. Okay? The third hat of the Jesuits changed their identity 3 times. And the third time's a charm, obviously, because nobody hardly suspects Freemasonry in this country. It's at least not talked about in the public forum. And that must change in this country. That must change. We've got to put aside all this fear of being persecuted for being outspoken about who's really in control of this country and expose them. Now, it says another emblem on the dollar bill is Annuit Septis, which has been widely interpreted to mean he favors our enterprise. But any Latin dictionary will reveal that, in fact, it means year of conception. Annuit Septis means year of conception, a reference to the Roman numerals at the base of the pyramid, MDCCLXXVI, which adds up to 1776. That's the year of the conception of the New World Order, at least as far as Illuminism is concerned and Freemasonry is concerned. But the New World Order has been a goal of Satan ever since the Tower of Babel. And it has been the goal of the papacy ever since the founding of the papacy. The papacy is just a continuation of Nimrod's attempt to create a New World Order at the Tower of Babel. Now, God confounded the languages at that time and thereby creating the nations and national sovereignty, and all of that's being attacked today. National sovereignty, we've just described how they've redrawn the borders. That destroys national sovereignties. And they're building a new world government that destroys all national independence and effectively undoing that which God did for our protection at the Tower of Babel by confounding the languages and creating the nations. Never again could Satan unite all the people and force them to commit idolatry, as did Nimrod at the Tower of Babel and as the Pope is doing today. The Pope is just a modern-day Nimrod. He's undoing everything that God did to protect us at the Tower of Babel. He's fulfilling his prophetic role perfectly. And that's what the New World Order is. The unification of all the world's people, all the world's religions under one ecclesiastical and temporal head. The two keys of the papacy. One world government, one world religion, and of course you have to have a one world economic system. And you have to have the papacy in a position to globally redistribute the wealth and the resources of the world. And you have to have, if the papacy's in control, he has to hold true to his identity and kill God's people. That's what he's going to do. So, I hope I'm helping you do the math of what's happening in the country today. And I was just sent emails this morning. Bill Gates talking about global warming and how we have to reduce the world's population in order to save the planet. Let me ask you something. Are you a child of God? Do you believe the Bible? Do you just pay Jesus lip service, or do you really believe what he said? Do you know what he said in the book? Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Now, don't you think that if the God of creation told mankind to be fruitful and to fill the earth, that he would put us in an environment that would sustain an earth full of people? But that's not what the Illuminati teaches today. Bill Gates, devout Roman Catholic, he and his wife both, serving the papacy loyally in everything they do, promote this idea of global warming, that somehow Jesus just was inept, and although he told man to multiply and fill the earth, he made a few mistakes in his creation, and the earth isn't able to sustain us any longer. Not at the rate of growth that we currently see in the world. Too much carbon dioxide production, too many greenhouse gases, too much global warming, too little energy, too many people, not enough food, and too much pollution, and we just need to remake this creation and correct some of the mistakes that our Creator made. Baloney. Look, if you call yourself a Christian and you believe this global warming thing, you're speaking out of both sides of your mouth. You either believe that Christ created this world to be filled with his creation, mankind, and that he gave the natural systems of this earth to regulate and to keep that environment safe and productive so that we might continue to fill the earth, or God is a fool. You can't claim Jesus out of one side of your mouth and then believe everything the globalists and the papists tell you. Does that make sense? Are we truly Christians? How is it that we're so easily deceived to believe the garbage of global warming? And how is it that a Christian who knows the Bible, who reads the genealogies of the Bible, clearly can do the math and figure that the earth is no more than 6,000 years old? How is it that we so casually out of our mouths say that, well, the earth is billions of years old? How is it those of us who believe the Bible and say we're Christians know that God created man in his own image out of the dust of the ground, and then turn around and say, well, we're evolving? You know, we came from pond scum and gradually learned to walk on our hind feet. What an insult to the Creator. We have the creation account. Do we believe God or don't we? And do you know most of our churches today have accepted this nonsense of a creation Sunday? Yeah, every Sunday, a Sunday every year is dedicated to evolution. It's called Evolution Sunday. Did I say Creation Sunday before? I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. I mean Evolution Sunday. Yeah, that's the papacy, filtering his teachings down to the Protestant churches. The Vatican has endorsed this idea of evolution, that the creation account of Genesis is just allegory, and that there's much truth in what Darwin taught. Now, if you came from pond scum, then there was no creation. And if no creation, then there was no creator. And if there was no creator, there's no God. So we must make our own God. And the Pope standing in the wings, just willing to accept the scepter from humanity. And according to the ecumenical movement and the Tea Party movement, we're willing to give him that scepter. Do you see how apostate Christianity is in this world? It's no wonder that Christ said, when I return, shall I find faith upon the earth? The God of this world has control of our minds. We don't spend enough time in the Scriptures. We don't examine our beliefs. We don't examine our language. We don't examine our thoughts. We just say we're Christians out of one side of our mouths and repeat whatever the Pope tells us out of the other. And we never stop to comprehend how contradictory they are. The author continues, he says, consider the following inscription on a plaque that was read at the ceremony for the laying of the cornerstone of the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C. Quote, this southeast cornerstone of the Capitol of the United States of America in the city of Washington was laid on the 18th day of September in the 13th year of American independence, in the first year of the second term of President George Washington, in the year of Masonry, 1793, by the President of the United States in concert with the Grand Lodge of Maryland. Imagine a Freemasonic Grand Lodge in Maryland, the Roman Catholic colony. Several lodges under the jurisdiction, and Lodge number 22 of Alexandria, Virginia. It says, this is the exact wording engraved on the silver plaque given to President George Washington himself, a Freemason, by Daniel Carroll, brother of the Jesuit Bishop John Carroll, the Jesuit priest John Carroll, and which plaque is laid on the ground underneath the cornerstone of the Capitol of the United States. The U.S. capital city itself is laid out in the shape of a pentagram, and the Capitol building in the shape of a pentagon, both well-known symbols of occultism and witchcraft. Why? Because they honor the witch in Rome. It says not only that, but Albert Pike, the Masonic Grand Inspector General, a Confederate general, and remember that the papacy sided with the Confederacy, is memorialized in Washington. That's right, Albert Pike, a Luciferian, a known, confessed Luciferian. If you read his book, Morals and Dogma, you'll see it for yourself. Yes, Albert Pike, a sworn Luciferian, an oath-spitting warrior for the Pope, the Confederate general who fought on the side of Pope Pius IX's Jefferson Davis, is memorialized in Washington, D.C. Quote, Pike died in his rooms at the Temple on April 2nd, 1891. 7 years later, Congress approved the raising of the Albert Pike Memorial, a larger-than-life, full-length, that is 50-foot statue, a 50-foot statue of Luciferian Albert Pike, and it stands on a high pedestal attended by a lamenting woman said to represent the spirit of Masonry. Now, who do you suppose that woman really represents? What is the spirit of Masonry? The spirit of Masonry is Illuminism. And Illuminism is the spirit of Jesuitism. And who did Jesuit General Ignatius Loyola worship? The spirit of the Roman Catholic Church, the Virgin Mary. That's who laments over the death of Albert Pike. And who does the Virgin Mary represent? None other than the witch at Rome, the Roman Catholic Church. He, just like every illuminated Freemason, served the Vatican, and it is the Roman Catholic Church in the image of the woman that weeps and laments over the loss of Albert Pike. Now, continuing in the book, it says, indeed, it may come as a surprise to some that within the ranks of Freemasonry were the likes of President George Washington, who laid the cornerstone of the Capitol building, Joseph Smith, the founder of the diabolical Mormon Church. I'll add the word diabolical because it is diabolical. And Benjamin Franklin, who sat on the first design committee of the Seal of the United States. He was an illuminated Freemason. He was out of the lodge in France. He was a demonic individual, an oath-spitting warrior for the Jesuits. And it says, even Daniel Boone, the mythologized early pioneer of Kentucky, was also a Freemason. Consider, too, quote, the Great Seal of the United States is dripping with Masonic symbolism. It can be seen on the reverse side of the dollar bill. The men who were commissioned by the Continental Congress to come up with the seal for the United States were all Freemasons. Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, and it says it was Thomas Jefferson himself who placed the triangle around the all-seeing eye, which represents Lucifer, which also represents the Jesuit general who sees all and hears all. It was Thomas Jefferson who added the triangle around the all-seeing eye, added the year 1776, and the words e pluribus unum, out of many, one, which is the same slogan they used for the European Union, which we clearly understand is a Roman Catholic superstate. And so is the United States. That's what this chapter is all about. E pluribus unum, out of many, one. And what is the slogan? It's essentially the same thing in Europe. Many people, one voice. Many languages, one voice. It's the same thing. Remember, this is going to be a global government of the Pope. Yes, continue the quote. It was Thomas Jefferson himself who placed the triangle around the all-seeing eye, added the year 1776 and the words e pluribus unum to accurately describe all the Masonic and occult symbols contained in the Great Seal of the United States would require a separate article. The fact that there are Masonic symbols on the Great Seal is a further indication of the deep influence which Masonry has had on the American culture. And never, never, never let your mind escape the fact that Freemasonry serves the Jesuit general. Freemasonry at the top is Jesuitism. And it said, should the reader doubt that these Masonic symbols, should the reader doubt that these are Masonic symbols, we quote the April 1960 issue of the official Masonic magazine, New Age, appropriately named, I will just add. Quote, Masonic symbols in a dollar bill, 13 leaves in the olive branches, 13 bars and stripes in the shield, 13 feathers in the tail, 13 arrows, 13 letters in the words e pluribus unum on the ribbon, 13 stars in the green crest, 32 long feathers representing 32 degrees in Freemasonry, 13 granite stones in the pyramid with the Masonic all-seeing eye at the top, 13 letters in Annuit Septus, which they quote here as meaning God has prospered, which is nonsense. And it says on the front of the dollar bill is a key, a square, and as well as a compass. All Masonic emblems. The dollar bill commemorates Freemasonry, which is what? Jesuitism. It's the Jesuit order that controls our government. All of these symbols are Freemasonic. They're Jesuitical. And the New World Order is a global papal hegemony. And we're either going to serve him or we're going to serve Christ. We cannot have two masters. My pleasure to host Inquisition Update this week.